From the truckload quoting page within TyTMS, you can create a new shipment to instantly display your historical lane average alongside all of the market-leading rating intelligence tools. In just a few clicks, you can adjust the quote, add your margin, select your quote response template, and email an official quote right off to the customer from the same page. Request a demo today at ty-software.com to find out how TyTMS can optimize your quoting process.
Welcome back to another edition of Check Call. Today we're covering automation and LTL. Don't forget to subscribe to Check Call, the newsletter on FreightWaves.com if you haven't already. Before we dive into our guest interview, there is some news in the world that you should check out. Nearshoring is something everyone seems to be doing. Demand for industrial space is on the rise at the US-Mexico border, and another company looking to expand operations to Mexico is none other than Tesla. The electric car manufacturer is looking to build the facility in Monterrey. This juicy part of this announcement is that the president of Mexico, Andre Manuel Lopez Obrador, came after he said he would not allow Tesla to build a plant in Nuevo León, where Monterrey is located. The reason for the original decision to not allow Tesla to build is due to water shortages in the area, and the government isn't approving any permits for factories or industrial parks that have heavy water usage. In order to get these permits, though, Tesla has provided a series of commitments to face the problem of water scarcity and making an effort to use recycled water. As more and more shippers are looking to expand operations into Mexico, I wouldn't be surprised if more and more regulations and emphasis are placed on sustainability and water conservation initiatives. This week's Sonar chart of the show is a snapshot of Allentown, Pennsylvania market. Capacity in this market is loosening as outbound tender rejections continue to fall, while outbound tender volumes have leveled off. Spot rates will continue to slide downwards in this market until outbound tender rejections rise again. Today we are joined by Walter Mitchell, CEO of Ty Software. Hello and welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So we're talking about one of my favorite topics today that pretty much anytime I can get someone to, spend more than 30 seconds talking to me, I will just latch on and double down on it. And that is LTL, and specifically LTL automation, two of my favorite things coming together to make magic. I don't think other people consider it magic, but I do. So how does LTL...
There is some magic there for sure. So let's talk about magic.
Absolutely. It's like, LTL is such an underrated thing because everybody just hates it because it's complicated and weird and backwards, but it's really not that bad. You just have to lean in and accept that it's going to get weird for a little bit.
That's right.
So how does LTL automation it's because it's always very difficult to automate because you have so many moving parts and, you have to make it through crosstalks and everything like that. But how does that automation handle complexity and specifically scalability across all customers in actual real world applications? Because you can do it in software all day, but the second you actually have drivers and forklifts and everything like that, it gets a lot trickier.
Yeah. So, we work on it mostly from the broker's perspective. And from that side of it, you're absolutely right. Like LTL automation is super critical to making it run effectively, right? And so when you, like you said, you talk about like a full truckload guy who gets introduced to LTL, they get a little weird for a while, but it's a different type of transaction, and similar to like parcels, very different from LTL and very different from full truckload, but really kind of lands in the middle, where we have this really high expectation of automation. We have a high expectation of moving our freight and giving us visibility with a really low touch. And I think that's the key to it, is that we've got to think about, when we think about LTL, focusing on automation and focusing on allowing the automation to do its job is critical to the process, because there's not a lot of margin there, as there would be in larger shipments. So allowing the automation tools to do what they need to do and making sure that they're set up to do what they need to do really helps the process move forward and helps the process stay really streamlined. And so an example of that is during the the initial process of entering the load. Well, everywhere along the line, it's really important to make sure we get it right. But for example, at the pickup, that's a great place to kind of really break automation. But when the driver shows up to pick up your freight, you get a lot of discussion about like, well, should I pre-pro my shipments? Will that help? And the answer is usually not. A lot of times it's better to focus on what is best for the carrier. And if that driver already has pre-scanned his pros that are in his truck, let him hit your shipments with those pros. It's going to be better because when that happens, it allows the driver to work in his most ideal way. And when he's working in his ideal way, it's going to allow the next step to operate ideally as well. And that's the key to automation, is allowing the shipment to flow in an ideal way, really kind of lets the rest of it move along and flow properly through the right channels.
It's something literally as simple as like taking a step and having that conversation and say, what can we do to make this easier for you? And if a lot of times if you just do that, because like you said, that driver, he knows what he has to do when he unloads it. He knows the fastest way to get moved through, because a driver doesn't want to sit there at like his cross dock trying to wait 3 hours to get unloaded. He knows what he needs to do to get moved, to get unloaded, and to get his product off his truck and get moving again. So if you just take that step and say, okay, like we know what is easier for us, but if we have to alter something because it's easier for you and it makes it like, better, then we can adjust our process. And that's something that I feel like a lot of people forget, is to, ask other people involved in later, like throughout the entire life of the shipment, of just, hey, what's the easiest thing for you?
Yeah, and then that easy, if you take away a little bit of easy early on in the process, it really causes pretty significant ripples down on the other end, right? So even if you end up, like back to that pro example, if you do end up putting your own pro number on and then the driver repros it, when you get down to the billing section and you receive an invoice, or the carrier is ready to send an invoice, do they send it under the old pro or the new? Typically, it's going to be under the new, but you're still trying to track it under the pro, and now you've built an accounting exception in, and that just adds so much extra work, all because we kind of took a little bit away at the beginning to lose a little bit of that convenience.
Yeah, it's something like I can't even tell you how many times I've sat there and gone through something, and from the problem that I had as like an auditor or someone like looking to pay invoices, I just said, okay, this is the problem that we're having. Like, let's try and literally work it backwards to figure out how we can fix it and make it not a whole deal. And sometimes it's literally as easy as changing an EDI code, and you're like, oh, okay, well, it's mapping differently, problem solved. Other times it's down to like how that shipment was created in our system by someone else. And I'm like, oh, well, that's just a retraining thing. And then this whole problem goes away, and I don't have to spend 2 hours of my life every week working on this. Done. Done.
Right? And the way you're phrasing that is so smart, Mary. It's that it's so important to, when you do find those issues, to go backwards in the LTL process. And it's super important in LTL. Just go backwards and find out where that problem was. And it's likely it is a little bit systemic. And an example of what you're talking about in that our TMS does is that, when we have an LTL shipment that's moving, and then later on you find out, oh, well, this was a residential pickup, but the customer didn't put residential pickup because they weren't really paying attention, and maybe it was malicious, maybe it wasn't, who knows? Um, but that's not the important part. The important part is that next time they ship from that address, that we don't let them do it again, because that's fine. You dealt with one exception, but you got to take that and go backwards and make sure that we don't have repetitive shipments going to that same address that are always residential. And so what our TMS will do is primarily we'll take, once a shipment gets a residential added to it, we'll link it up to the product catalog for that, or the address book for that shipment, and make sure that in the future it automatically adds that residential pickup or residential delivery. So the customer has to be, then they do have to be deliberate to remove it. And they usually don't, right? So we get it accurate at the beginning, and it makes it flow nicely through the rest of the process. Then there's a couple really cool tools too that help us, and we put in an address and they'll just tell us if it's residential.
That's actually like from the auditing perspective, because I spent some time as an LTL auditor, that saves so much time on the back end versus sitting there and going, oh, we have a residential pickup that wasn't on the original shipment. So let me Google this address and zoom in to like the satellite view and see if it actually is residential or if it's a different or if it's just like a strip mall delivery or if it's a normal dock delivery. And there were times that, we found a residential charge that shouldn't have been and we got it removed. But those are the exceptions that you should be working, not, oh, Tom forgot to put that this was residential for the fifth time this week. Like those are things that those are not things you should be wasting your time on.
So true, so true. That not to mention just the angst that it builds into to the auditors and the people dealing with that, right? Like, oh my goodness, not this problem again,
Right?
right?
Because then you start seeing it with the same person. And then every single time you see a shipment created by this person, you're like, okay, well, what problem am I going to have to fix today? Because it's always something
Right.
with this one.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So let's try to prevent those and learn from our mistakes, right? And so that's why going right back to what you said, if we can analyze an error, a mistake that happened, or something that caused difficulty later in the LTL process, we can usually fix it early on and then let that automation move right through. So much
So
better.
we kind of talked about this a little bit, but everyone wants to know. It's kind of everywhere you go, visibility is like shouted, and everybody wants to know what's happening in real time and everything like that. And LTL does an okay job of it, but ultimately, like you're not going to know the same way that you would know like your Amazon package that's like 10 stops away from your house. But kind of how is this automation component for LTL addressing that demand for real time visibility and monitoring and kind of that ever changing environment?
Yeah, I think it's an opportunity that's really waiting for the next step, and we're going to see it over the next couple years. More demand for um, that real-time level of visibility on the LTL freight. We're starting to see it a lot more on the full truckload side, where more and more drivers are sending back locations, and that we're seeing through tools like Trucker Tools and obviously Macro Point's a big contributor there. So we're getting it on the full truckload side. We're getting it on parcel, but LTL's still kind of hiding that information and not really sharing it. We know the carriers have it because we know all the trucks have the GPSs in them and are sharing it. It's just about sharing it to the customers, and we're going to see that change, and it's going to come from shippers and customers demanding it. And over the next couple years, for sure, that'll be that visibility is going to start showing up. So I'm really looking forward to it because I think it's necessary. I want that level of visibility.
I've wanted that level of visibility forever. I feel like LTL, like, because Parcel, they've kind of got their own thing going. Truckload, they have modernized quite quickly. I still feel like LTL is stuck in like 2002, and it hasn't really like gotten the technology upgrades and that like all the tools and the fun stuff that Truckload's getting. Like LTL is just sitting over here like, hi, we're still running on Excel spreadsheets and that's how we're living our lives. And I feel like, and there's so many applications that can be done. I just think everyone kind of forgets about LTL sometimes. It makes me sad because there's a lot that can be improved.
Yeah, and to me, it's even more difficult than that because we know from the carrier point of view, we know the carrier has it. Like that information exists. We're just choosing to not share it. And that's even harder to for me to get my head around because as the technology geek I love that information. I love to be able to share it and provide that, and I think the customers and the shippers want it. I think they're desperate for it, and because we've seen it in other places and we're used to it, we're used to seeing that level of visibility. And to me, I think one of the reasons that we don't have it is that I don't know that on the LTL side, um, I think the carriers don't want to emphasize that, hey, your shipment is sitting on this at this cross dock for 24 hours. And I think my opinion is I don't think that the carriers believe that the consumer or the shipper will tolerate that information. But I don't think that's true. I think we will tolerate it, and I think the shippers will be okay with it. We just have to be transparent about it, and we're okay with it on parcel. We know that whenever we ship something through FedEx, it's going to go to Memphis and it's going to be there for 6 or 12 hours, or If there's a storm, maybe 48 hours or, you know, who knows? But we tolerate it and we know because our expectation is that, hey, at least we're getting the visibility. And as kind of grown-ups, I think we learned that this is how it works. We'll just be patient, but at least we have visibility.
Yeah, it's kind of that something is better than nothing. Because, like, I know that, like, if I see a shipment, if I see that my shipment got into, like, for example, Memphis, if I see it got in at like 4 o'clock, I'm like, it's going to sit there till tomorrow morning because it probably missed the line haul cutoff. So I was like, well, that's fine. I know that that's going to happen. I know it's going to take a few days versus I know when I see it come from Indiana, I was like, oh, it might actually be here in 2 days because Indiana's not that far from me. But it's also, but like when it comes to LTL, it's just like it got picked up. Okay, well, like where is it now? On its way. And then you're like, oh, but where is it now? And they're like, it'll be there tomorrow. Maybe.
Yeah. We have been able to extract that from a handful of LTL carriers where we get at least the crosstalk level information. So on that side, it your automation platform or how you're getting your data through automation can really vary. And we work pretty hard in our TMS to make sure that we're getting as much of that as we can. So for most of the big LTL carriers, we do get that it's at a crossdock um, or at one of their terminals, I guess. We'll get all that information, but what we don't get is that final mile. The final mile is really where it disappears. And we'll know that it's out for delivery, but a lot of times we find out it's out for delivery after it's delivered. So it's a little bit late on that data. So that's where we could get a little more real time, right? If we can know that it's out for delivery right when it's out for delivery, and how cool it would be if LTL could tell us like, hey, 10 stops away.
I mean, like the technology is already there. It's not like you're reinventing the wheel or, you have to go turn a stone and make it into a wheel. You just are taking parts of that wheel and just applying it to it. And I don't know, I like to think that maybe as more technology enabled stuff like the API calls, dynamic pricing, et cetera, like that, some of those carrier relationships with shippers and carrier or shippers and 3PLs and freight brokers, I feel like that will kind of help open up some of that trust and that like no, everything's fine if we connect. It's just I just want a little bit more visibility. That's all I'm asking for.
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity there for sure, and it's got to start with the shippers. I think as a technology provider, we're very eager to do our part, and probably the most eager, right? Because we do want to push forward what technology is available and push forward the information, and it's an important component for us as the technology provider. But I think once the shippers really start promoting it more and pushing and expecting it more, then the carriers will come in line because, like you said, the tools are already there. We just have to make a little bit of a priority of using them.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that I am kind of really excited about, which is a weird thing to be excited about, but there is some rumblings happening around the LTL world that we will remove NMFC codes and move to a density-based pricing situation. Do you think that that's going to be a reality in the future for LTL, or do you think the NMFC codes are here to stay forever?
Well, that's a tough one. This is where I get to show my age in the industry. I've been hearing that rumor for a while. There are a handful of tariffs and pathways today that you can move LTL without it. But I think it's going to be here for a while still. Um, I would, I think it'd be really interesting to see it go away and to change, because in the end we want to have accurate shipments, and that's what the classification system was about initially, was to make sure that we had accuracy in what was moving and that we could price based on what was moving. But now, what we've seen is that supplemental insurance is very important for pretty much all freight, not even high value freight anymore, but pretty much all freight, because the coverage being provided by the LTL carriers is lowered, and uh, and that's fine. That's probably the better way to run it anyway, is to separate your value and the insurance from the pricing of the shipment. But then with density based, we can do so much more, and the technology is better. So I hope that we continue to move towards a density based system and kind of comply with the rest of the world.
I I mean, I know it's like a pipe dream to have, like, and a weird dream to like have, like, oh, an MFC goes, we'll be gone someday. But a girl's got to have dreams, and I don't know. I think we'll see a world where they exist together before they exist like on their own, because we see it now with some of like that dynamic pricing that we have that based off like certain densities or whatever, like that will return your rate, and we see it a little bit with volume quotes. But I don't know, I'm still optimistic.
I
I
think
think
we're
it'll
moving that
happen.
way, and I support your dreams, and I hope that I can help do my part to help get those dreams to become a reality, because I
I
think it is a
mean, the
better
way you
way.
guys are, yeah, the way you guys are heading, you're just going to revolutionize and improve all of the LTO world anyway, so it'll happen.
We're trying. We're trying. In fact, in our TMS, because what we see is freight forwarders really struggle with the classification system, right? The companies that understand LTL do a great job with it, but when you bring the classification system to freight forwarders, they get pretty confused initially because it's a different world, and I understand it's confusing. So we have built a number of tools that help translate density-based pricing and dimensional-based pricing into NMFC numbers, and that component really helps in those cases. So we're trying to do our part to make your dreams a reality, and we're going to continue to push down that road.
I appreciate it because as someone who has sat there and talked through countless carrier sales reps of like, no, this is actually why we code it this way, because like it depends on like what if that carrier likes to reclass things or just knowing things like, no, it's actually like this because of this reason. And please stop changing it to this other one because it never works. I understand it's a lower class, but it's not going to work. Just don't make me pay the reway fees.
It goes right back to what we were talking about at the beginning, in that when you pick that poorly, it causes so many problems down the road, and it breaks so much of the streamlined process and the automation. So let's get it right to start with.
Hey,
And
all we
that's
can
really the
do is just
biggest
be
argument,
better.
right? Yeah, for sure. And I think that's the biggest argument for density-based pricing and dimensional-based pricing is that the number of reways will get reduced, or
That would be
reclassifications.
that's
Yep.
they're the exact same thing in my
Yeah,
mind.
they are.
And except apparently they're not when they charge one fee for reclassification and one fee for reways. And I'm just like, I see
Yeah.
what you're doing and that's shady.
Well, it's tough when you get both of them on the same shipment, right? A reclass and a reway.
Yeah.
Yeah, those
Yeah.
hurt.
That's when you're like that's when you're like, I'm just gonna go home now.
Yeah,
I'm done.
this shipment's not working out for me. Just send it back.
No. We don't need it. Nobody needs it that badly.
Yeah,
So we
yeah,
are almost out of time, and it would not be an episode of Check Call if I didn't give you the question that we ask everyone. And it's a question that's honestly dividing households. So are you
yeah.
ready for it?
I'm ready.
Is a hot dog a sandwich?
Well, that's a tough question, and I'm going to say because I'm a real American, the answer is firmly no. A hot dog is not a sandwich.
Excellent.
But in that same note, again, because I'm an American, a hamburger is also not a sandwich. A hamburger is a
Okay.
hamburger. A sandwich is a sandwich, and a hot dog's a hot dog.
Mm-hmm.
And combining those
Correct.
together is inappropriate classification, and you're going to get a reclassification fee for that for sure.
It all comes back to LTL.
I'm glad I could bring that home for you.
That is by far the best reasoning that I've heard for this, possibly ever.
Awesome. I'm going to pull that one out and
So
make sure
if
we get that on
anyone
LinkedIn.
wants,
Uh,
oh, for sure. If anyone wants to find you outside of this, where can they find you?
So you can find us at tie-software.com. You can find us on LinkedIn and through our website. We'd be happy to connect with you and show you what our TMS is all about. But it's really focused a lot on LTL and automation.
So basically, if you just want all of your LTL and automation problem solved, just call Ty.
Call us. We'll help you out.
All right. Well, thank you so
All
much
right.
for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it, Mary.
Find Check Call the Podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Don't forget to check out all the other incredible FreightWaves podcasts, such as At Your Doorstep and The Drop Zone. Don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter at freightwaves.com/checkcall. See you on the internet.